Again, this morning we have another chain reaction, or series as they are, of WebDev on Imagine the Possibilities with WX. And Glenn's here to tease us more with this stuff. Here we go.
We're going to take over again from last week when I did the tease to show you SmartyStreets, and this is kind of a high-level view. There's two things in here. There's the SmartyStreet component, and they actually will return addresses back to you. And so let me just quickly go over to their site, and let's go to the. Here's their site. It's at smartystreets.com. And you can either validate addresses using an API in real time and submit one address or multiple addresses. You can also submit lists to them, and it will turn it right around. Submit a text file to them, they'll validate it, and it will come back to you as a text file. Using the API, we're able to do it either as a REST service, which would be the equivalent of a WebDev AWP page, controls on it, or you can actually do HTML coming back, or you can do JSON, and that's the way that I chose to do that. And so let me show you what it looks like, the data coming back. And so here on the screen in my browser, I've got, let's see, this is a single response coming back. And down here, I've got multiple addresses being returned. And the nice thing with how they do this is it's actually coming back as named pairs. And so no matter if they add new fields or delete fields or rename them, it's not going to blow up your code, at least not the way that I have it coded. You may not be getting back your results, but at least you won't blow up. And so let me just run this so we can see what it's doing and what it's looking like. Oh, I did want to mention this. Let me go back to SmartyStreets. Let's go look at pricing. And it's not usual that I will advertise other people's products outside of our small groups here, but they actually have a very nice product here. And here's how they have. You can actually have free forever 250 lookups a month. So if you're on a small lookup scale, that's very affordable. And you can actually come up to unlimited, and you can say it can be $1,000. And if you do it yearly, unlimited is 10,000. So that would be for big mail order houses, those kinds of things. But otherwise, the 500 or 1,000 lookups a month, it's not bad. Considering that your alternative is to purchase lists from a third-party vendor and then have to work out your own synchronization method of updating your lists with their lists. And to me, this is just much simpler to implement. So let's go over to the project here, and I'll run this. And we'll look at some of the code, but still, again, at a high level. And so I can put in 326 Fallon Parkway, St. Peters, Missouri, 63376. That's my address here. We'll do a search on it. And I'm going to break right there. And when it comes back with my coding, you can see I've got it now filled in the street name and the street number and the street name, and it tells me the county that I'm in and my extended zip code, as well as a whole bunch of other information. And let me put in 327. That should be an address that doesn't exist. We'll see what happens. Come back, run this. No matching address found there. Now, what I've also figured out from this is you can just put in a minimal address, which is nice. 326 Fallon, 63376. So you put in just as much as the address that you know, and it will come back and validate the address. What I've also found is you not only don't have to put everything on those separate lines, the address, the city, the state, the zip, you can put it all on one line and submit that one line, which simplifies your programming.
How does it handle P.O. boxes?
As long as it's a valid address that comes from the post office, it should handle that.
Mhm.
Now let me go ahead and let's run this, and I'll show you how we're setting this up for the call to SmartyStreets. The first thing that you'll be doing is you'll be getting two different tokens. One's an authorization token, and then one's just the authorization, and that's represented here. They will give that to you based on your account of how much of what you purchased. And then what we're doing is we're just building these different fields that we're going to be submitting to them in the call. And so you can see all I do is I build my whole parameter string, and then I just send it to them in my HTTP request. Okay, here's the URL, sending everything up there. When it comes back, I'll have an HTTP request, and this is what it looks like. And again, these are the named pairs that are coming back with a value. Here's delivery line 1326 Fallon Parkway, and then the last line. So it comes back in the request, and then what we'll need to do is we will have to parse it out because I'm using JSON. Now, I am certainly no JSON expert. And I was even struggling with how am I going to implement this because there is no native JSON parsing in WD. So Bob Roos was kind enough to say, oh, I have this JSON parsing routine that somebody had given him. And so let's just quickly look at what that looks like. So in the first place, I do want to give congrats to Hilario Perez because he wrote this parsing routine. And it's really nothing but a state engine. And it just checks to see where you're at with any row of your JSON string that's coming back. Now, how he had implemented it, and I'm not sure if it's how JSON works, but this handles just one return record. And in our case, when I have the multiple records, I need to have two data sets coming back. So rather than go and try and figure out what he's doing with his, because he's overwriting it each time, it was just easier for me to create an array with two columns. And I wasn't. He's creating an associative array, and then I'm thinking, well, I need to know those names of the association that's coming back. Well, in mine, all I do is I read the array, and I get the name of the data type or the field in one column and the value in the other column. So let me go back here, and let me just run that again because I want to put in one other kind of address: 300 MICHIGAN CHICAGO, Illinois. The other one returned a single address. And so what I want to do is show you what happens. As we come in, we've executed this. We're now at JSON. Okay. And now you can see here's what I do is we're needing to find out how many elements I have. I have 62, and I also returning how many record counts I have. So I have 62 coming back, but I actually have 2 records. So I know I'm going to be having 31 different elements that I have to read for each record. And if we look at their documentation, we can see how it's coming back, and it's, let's go up to here. We have something called components, primary number, components, street number, and down here we have metadata, record type, and metadata, county, FIPS. So what I do is, I go back to my code, I'm actually looping through every record that I've got out of the array, and I'm checking to see if it's a delivery line or if it's a components.primary number, or even coming down here, it's metadata. And I just read it out of that element of the array. And then once I have it, I can actually just put it into my different fields on the screen. But in this case, what's happening is I have, as we knew, we have multiple addresses coming back because 300 Michigan Avenue could be north or south. So I just populate my table. And what I've done with this is since this isn't an array, I just have the source for the table as an array. And so it takes like 2 lines of code to populate the table. You associate the array with that, and then you do a source to screen. And then I just select the record, and it's validated here again. And then I select it. So, you know, at its simplest form, this is what it takes to get JSON to return an address. Just return all your addresses in that one parameter. Do your HTTP request to their server. Bring back your request. You know, validate that you've got something in there. I can tell the URL is invalid if we have an error there. And then once I bring it back, I've got it in JSON. Now, we could have done it as XML, but I was having an issue trying to process that in XML, and also in their documentation, they say, yes, they support XML, but if you want to be sure your code will not be breaking, depending on what they're doing in the future, the JSON is the smarter way to go with how it gets returned and how it gets coded. So, you know, at its very high level, I showed just how we do the JSON parse, but I wished we had that functionality built in. And as I had said in the beginning, I was struggling with how am I going to parse this? And I'm sure there's a .NET DLL out there that I could have used. And I chose to go this direction just because if I needed to make some kind of a change to what was handling, I could see that in the code. And as we go back...
Yeah, I believe there are some browser functions for JSON because browsers actually can parse JSON themselves. So there is a way in browser code to do some direct JSON stuff, but the Mailgun API I use, exact same issue, and I wound up with this same guy. He's somewhere in South America, if I remember right.
He is, yes.
I used his class as well. You know, there's some good stuff up there on that repository on the WinDev site. And this is one of the things that's up there.
Yeah, he did a great job. It just saved me a whole bunch of time. And what I found is, well, first of all, you can see there's really not much documentation of what's going on in here. There just isn't. And then whatever there is, I've added it for what I've changed or Bob has. And so what I really did is just figured out where is this breaking when it comes to the end of a record set, and then to be able to do that, or as an address coming back, I figured, oh, these are what I need to process to be able to keep on running, and then I just added to my own array, which just made it very handy, and then to parse through that. So, I mean, kudos to him for creating this. It would have certainly taken me a while to figure out what was going on in JSON. And you're right, there probably are browser functions for that because the JSON is just what that stands for, JavaScript object notation.
Right,
so being
notation.
Yeah, so the browser should handle that. And so my next exercise at some point will be to take this and move this up to the browser for address validation also. But anyway, the SmartyStreets, I can't say enough about them. Their prices are reasonable. It's very fast coming down. They claim to be up 99.995% of the time. And the turnaround by the time you send them an address and it comes back is almost instantaneous, or as close to that. So let me just show the implementation possibly of the application. This is one that I'm currently working on. Okay, quote citation, add a citation. I think I can just go over to the Guardian tab and I'll put in the mother address. We'll see, 326. We'll see if how far I've got this coded. And I'll do okay. No, I don't have it in. If I had it totally coming through, it would have now populated these fields here for me. But the implementation is rather easy. It's just getting your head around that documentation that they have. But I do have to say their documentation is good, and their support is really good. You'll turn around and send them an email request, and I'll probably have it back that same day and pointing me either to documentation or they'll be saying, this is how you do something. So that is address verification at a high level.
Cool.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, as far as web services go, what Glenn is showing you here, there's basically two major types of web services. What this is a REST API. I can't remember what it stands for. You'll hear it referred to a lot as RESTful. And what it is some guys got together and decided we need to be able to, have request that is pure HTML, not browser specific, no technology specific, and that's what a RESTful API is. As you saw, it's a straight HTTP command. You could actually run that request in a browser window and get the JSON data back. So that's a RESTful API. The Mailgun API is the same way. Then Microsoft, of course, got involved and said, no, we can't do that. We have to have SOAP request and all that. And that's the new style API request. RESTful API is just like you'd mentioned, Glenn. That a lot of them now will give you JSON or XML, but RESTful APIs, for the most part, JSON's what you're going to see because the two technologies kind of go hand in hand. They're both browser agnostic, and that's the reason they like to use them. So usually when you're dealing with a RESTful API, you're going to be dealing with a JSON response.
And where JSON comes in handy is when you're working with numbers, and you can actually do it as text then. And their reasoning here is, the zip codes on the East Coast start with 0. And if you store that as a number, then it's going to truncate that 0. So JSON helps circumvent quite a few problems that you can have with XML, with formattings of whether they're going to be numbers or text. So in here we've got numbers leading with 0, and in other countries we've got letters embedded in there. And I'm trying to see, because they talk about REST. Here's REST, the REST endpoint, and here's how you send it in and how you retrieve it. And here's the XML coming back with this. And in the way I had just done that, this one is the response format as opposed to REST. So they really support almost any way that you need to be able to submit your data and get your data back. That's it for me. And this address verifications.
So REST is what? Representational state transfer?
Sounds good to me.
Something like that.
It was created by a bunch of Unix geeks, so it's probably Rasputin, Emperor. They how those Unix geeks name their functions.
Yep.
No, I just went to the wiki. It's representational state transfer. Crazy. Okay.
Oh, so it's in English.
It is.
I think I can remember JSON more than I can REST.
Well, go ahead. Thanks.
JavaScript. There we go.
Thanks for sharing there, baby.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend.
You too. Have fun.